Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video of phase 2. Now in this video we are going to talk about imbalance or pricing inefficiency. Now as we're aware, the way the markets move is essentially a interaction between buyers and sellers, right? And essentially it is the difference between supply and demand, where you're selling at supply, buying at demand. Now when there is a sudden volatile move, okay, which we'll talk about in terms of from our order blocks, when there's a sudden move, there's either excess supply or excess demand, okay, and that causes a pricing inefficiency. Now the reason why we're mentioning this is because this is used as a confluence behind your POI selection, and it gives you an idea of why price needs to do what it does. Okay, so to understand this to a better degree, for example, okay, say we have a graph, we have supply here and we have demand here. Okay, say we have that in the middle, that is our equilibrium. Okay, so that is where price is moving efficiently. Okay, so with normal markets we have this. Okay, price is, you know what, that's a very bad description, that's a very bad one. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so in this case what we have is price is moving perfectly, there's perfect amount of supply and demand, and there's no imbalance in the pricing, so price is moving in imbalance. However, sometimes when we have moves like this, where when we have moves that do this, okay, when that happens we have a gap in the market. Now what that means, essentially there's an excess of demand or excess of supply, not necessarily this diagram, but essentially that's what I'm showing you here. Pricing is fine, it's efficient, whereas here we have the gap, price didn't come back to fill it. So what that means is, so say for example if there's an excess of supply, okay, so say price is trading around here, okay, for it to come back, okay, if there's an excess, what we need is a deficit. However, if we have excess demand, okay, what we need is excess, so we need more supply to bring it back to equilibrium. Now this may sound obviously confusing at first, but essentially you need to understand that for the markets to work, there needs to be an even amount of supply and demand. That's equilibrium, right? So what this means is, and how we'll use it is, oops, I did not mean to do that. So for example, this is a normal one where price is efficient, as we can see. However, say if for example we have the sudden push and then price comes. Now in this case, right, let me draw this on. Now in this case, right, price is inefficient here. Okay, price is inefficient. Now for this price to be efficient, price needs to come back. It needs to come back and make pricing efficient and then continue. And then bear in mind, when that impulsive move happens, where the volatile move happens, or however you would say it, volatile, impulsive, sudden move, whatever, all right, there's generally an order block there. Now some people like to trade the imbalance, however we don't do that, and we don't call that mitigation either, so just bear that in mind. And that's just a correction of price, that's how we see it. But what this tells us is this basically gives us a reason for price to come back to the order block of our choice. So generally when we find an OB, we want to have a nice gap in between, basically imbalance or pricing inefficiency, because then it gives us price more reason to come back, because it needs to fulfill it. It needs to make pricing equal again. Okay, so essentially, to keep things absolutely basic, when you have an impulsive move, for example, let's just look into this scenario as we've been looking at over the last few videos. So in this video, not in this video, so on this move, what we have is this impulsive move. So the high was here. okay, and we create this high, okay. So we have this impulsive move, and obviously our order block here is the one that created the move, and our refinement is here. Now just above the refinement, what we have is imbalance. That's imbalance in pricing. Same thing here, imbalance in pricing, another impulsive move. Same thing here, okay. We got another break of structure here, for example. That's the main structure break, sorry. Okay, we have imbalance in price there. So essentially we're looking for that gap, and the only reason that we want to see it is purely around our POI selection, around the OBs that we'll be using to enter trades. We don't really care about it anywhere else, because all we're looking for, the reason we're looking for it is because we know that price needs to come back and make pricing efficient again. However, this does not mean it needs to happen straight away. So just bear that in mind. It can happen whenever. Pricing can be efficient whenever. But in terms of our two rules, and when we talk about invalidation as well, it'll make sense. But as long as it's valid according to our rules for our entry, it's still like we still use that. Okay, so basically we're looking for an OB with imbalance above it. That's the simplest way that I can put it. Same thing as we can see here, and you can see how prices come back here because we've got excess buying. Price needs to come back to correct it, and then it continues. Even on minor structures, as we can see, breaker structure, price comes back, corrects it, and then continues. Reacts at this OB and goes. Bear in mind that is minor structure. Your major structures are still here, which obviously goes on to break here. So now what we have, another impulsive move, and this is our OB, but this is the next candle before the imbalance, and it continues. Now when you have situations like this, for example, so let me get rid of that. So in terms of our structure break here, so we have this low, then we have the break. Okay, this break came from here. Now this of course is the OB. However, above this OB, there's no form of imbalance. What we can see is this wick. This wick has come back to correct the imbalance. So what this essentially is, and this is quite a nice trick to see, because on the lower time frames, remember we said about how the market's fractal, whatever's happening on lower time frames will eventually replicate on the higher time frames. That's probably the simplest way to see it. Now when you see this, for example, when price is efficient and is being made efficient, generally what that means is that price has broken structure and it's come back, mitigated it, and continued. And that wick shows that is the last selling before that big push. Now that is a refinement in itself without having to go through other time frames. So now this POI, although that's the OB, becomes this candle here, and that's exactly where price comes to and reacts off and goes. So just bear that in mind. If there's no imbalance around it, it doesn't really give it a reason or a cause to come this far down. However, you need to make sense of the fact of what's going on. Sorry, I drew too much. You need to make sense of what's going on, because what we can see here, as I said, is imbalance has been covered. It's been corrected by this candle and this wick. Okay, so we have selling pressure here, and then we have that big buy move that goes on to break the structure. So this indicates that the ideal POI that needs to be mitigated is here. And in terms of order flow, what we're assuming, okay, and obviously you can go to a lower time frame and review it, but what we can see here is that order flow is being created on a lower time frame here, and that is a last point of mitigation. So generally this also becomes an invalidation point. This will come in time. It will take some time to practice and understand what you're seeing, but this is just a quick way of understanding of developing a reason for your POIs, as long as you understand what price is doing. And it's why I say to focus on understanding what's happening inside a candle, because you need to understand how price is moving inside a candle, because it allows you to make decisions based on one time frame, for example, because you can understand where the ranges are, you can understand where the lower time frame mitigations are just by following the wicks. And when we do In this phase, there's another video that explains about understanding and reading price. It will make more sense on how to make decisions on this. So to wrap it up, imbalance essentially is the gap in the market. That's literally all it is, and all we look for is the imbalance around our POIs. Imbalance everywhere else, it doesn't really matter for us as such, because you have to bear in mind, with a rule-based strategy, we need to have some sort of control. Although with smart money concepts, it's very difficult to have a complete rule-based approach, but you have to bear in mind that this strategy is built on statistics, and you may see that price comes back feels some sort of imbalance, like say 50% of it, and continues, for example. We still need to stick to our rules, okay? So just bear that in mind. We still need to stick to the rules. We will not trade off imbalances, okay? We still need the mitigation of the OBs itself for us to actually start to enter. And when we start learning about entries in phase 3, you'll make sense of how to improve your odds and how to increase your probabilities. But to sum it up, imbalance essentially is inefficient in price, where there's too much buying or too much selling, and price needs to come back and correct it. But in short, we are only looking for it around our OBs.